Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we're going to be taking another look at the snowstorms that could trek across the United States. Here we're going to get kind of an updated look on that, but also do be sure to stay tuned because we're going to be taking a look at how this could affect us going into the winter of 2023 to 2024. So just getting another little updated outlook on what could occur during the wintertime here across the continental United States. As always, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell notifications. Very important there so you don't miss another video. Still, the majority of you guys are not subscribed and haven't hit the bell notification, so be sure to do so, and let's just get right into the video. All right, so starting off here with the risk of hazardous temperatures, right? So you can see the medium to high risks, especially across the middle of the country, where we're going to have moderate to high risks of, especially in the central U.S. there between Halloween and the 1st of November. So kind of like those 2 days there, where you could see a really big plunge of cold air, and that cold air settling in is what's going to lead to potentially, these snowstorms coming through, because when the cold air is settled in, we get enough moisture to ride in over that cold air. We're going to get those snowstorms starting to break out. So you can see the key below, moderate 40%, high 60%. So there's a pretty steady chance. These are chances of seeing much below normal temperatures, right? Not just below average. These are chances of seeing much below normal temperatures indicated by all these dotted blue lines here. So that's something to look at. If we take a look at our oscillations, as I like to do in these videos usually, because they're a good telltale sign of what could happen, short term and even long term, right? Because of course these are going to be where we're going to be looking at later on in the video as well, when we take a look at how this could affect the 2023 to 2024 winter season. Right, it could lead to a lot of snowstorms for some people. Right, but we take a look at the PNA here again, the Pacific North American oscillation here. So this is basically telling us is that when it's in its negative phase, we can see colder air for the central and western United States and maybe some warmer air for the east. And that's what we're certainly seeing right now as it plunges into its negative phase. Here along the East Coast, it's going to be in the 70s. It's warming up, while the West Coast, and especially the Rocky region into the northern plains, is starting to see the snowstorms that we get this time of year. And that's happening, again, on pretty much when it usually does happen, maybe a little bit sooner than usual. But that's happening because of that negative PNA pattern that we're currently in, and could stay negative potentially even over the next couple of weeks or so. About the North American oscillation. So essentially, this is the PNA but reversed. So when it's in its negative phase, the east is generally cooler, the west is generally warmer. All right, and you can see that's pretty much hovered around the zero line. Really, nothing much has changed there from last video, of course, with the ensemble forecast for that. The Arctic oscillation kind of operates the same way, the same dynamic as the North Atlantic oscillation. This one is hovering around the zero line, but maybe could start to go positive, which maybe this would help to reinforce kind of what the PNA is doing, right? So a higher AO kind of means, again, warmer east and a cooler west. So let's get into some of the models here, take a look at an updated look at the latest run of these models to see what they're conveying here. So we take a look here at the GFS to start off. All right, you can see, again, low pressure forming out of the Rockies. We can see enormous moisture from the Pacific, kind of leading to a big moisture flow pretty much from New Mexico all the way up to Wisconsin and Michigan. You can see eventually low pressure will eject out of the Rockies, right? We're just seeing this jet stream flow kind of like this. High pressure is going to reinforce that cold air, all right, from north to south. And you can see eventually over the next, say, few days or so, by late week, the Dakotas and the Minnesota will be seeing some pretty heavy bouts of snow moving through. All right, and of course, it's changed from model on the model run, but it looks like for what's looking like right now is that later this week, Thursday into Friday, we're going to see a batch of snow move through. And then another one will form, right? Another low pressure system will form further south. The high pressure will be further south, which means the cold air will be able to advance further to the south, meaning we could see some snow break out across Colorado, maybe even Nebraska and southern South Dakota, as opposed to the Dakotas. Originally, you can see Nebraska, Minnesota, even some sleet getting down to eastern Nebraska and Iowa, right? This is pretty much by Saturday. All right, and we can even see some more sleet and snow breaking out on the tail end, kind of like a frontal boundary here. Cold air is going to come in behind it. And classic, autumn setup here. We can see some sleet and ice on the back side of that. All right, so that could be with us there pretty much through the weekend. And I'm only going to go out about a week because the longer term forecasting I'm going to, again, save for a little bit later on in the video. If we take a look at the snowfall totals, again, going a week out, this is until next Monday morning. You can see the Dakotas, Minnesota, even Nebraska, and through Iowa, Wisconsin, and again, even northwestern Kansas. But again, this is taking into account that more liquids, snow to liquid ratio, more accurate ratio that I was talking about from last video. Right, which means, again, doesn't just assume 10 inches of snow for every inch of liquid. It takes into account, it takes into an accurate account, by the day, not just assuming one flat ratio. So definitely helping us predict, more accurate snowfall totals more accurately. But it does show, again, not even just the mountains, right? We're getting to the Dakotas, Minnesota, even getting, again, as far south as Kansas there with some measurable snowfall. So that was the GFS. Now let's take a look at the Canadian model to see what they're saying. So again, pretty much same setup here for the next couple of days. The models we seem to agree on that. There will be a moisture surge coming from the Pacific, kind of coming from the southwest. All right. And again, you can kind of see we have the rain moving through out ahead of it. We got some snow coming in behind it. Classic fall storm setup here. Again, this is Thursday and the Friday. Right? Friday morning kind of makes its way out by later in the day Friday. Now, behind that low pressure, right, it's going to help with the help of the high pressure that's remaining here, right here, but as well as below that low pressure behind it here, we can see that the cold air will be reinforced behind it, which will set the stage and have the cold air in place for the next event. And that's why I think there's going to be this 1-2 punch. Right? And you can see, again, that cold air gets pretty far south. We're talking about sleet and ice all the way down into Nebraska, Kansas. It's not even Halloween yet. Like, this is crazy. Right? And you can even see in the Iowa as well. We could see some of that. It also depends on the time of day that it will happen, because you can see by the timestamp here, this is this next Sunday, right? This Sunday coming up in the morning, so about 7-ish a.m. or so, right? So that's one of the coldest times of the day, kind of like around that 4 to 6 a.m. Time frame. Right? So if if the storm comes in the morning, that might help the cold air. Of course, the colder air is in place. We might see some more wintry weather as opposed to rainy weather. Of course, that's the thing we have to worry about during the fall. I mean, if this was January, a lot of this area would probably be covered in snow. But even some ice getting as far south as Kansas and Texas, right? And that's pretty much as far as it goes out. It's about a week there. So, and that's where we're going to leave it with that. We'll definitely talk about the ice threat, though, in future videos as well, because that could certainly shape up to be some sort of ice threat, maybe for like Nebraska, Iowa, and down to Kansas. We take a look at the snowfall totals again. Not as, I wouldn't say as bullish as the GFS, right? GFS kind of put some 12-inch plus markers in the Dakotas. Canadian still does that, but a little bit more sporadically, right? Kind of enforcing that 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and also shows the snowfall being pushed a little bit further to the north. Maybe not as much for say Kansas and Iowa as the GFS had. Not that they had much, but again, pretty much the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Nebraska is where that heavier snow is going to be concentrated. All right, in our last model here, we're going to take a look at the European model right before, and then we'll start getting into what this could mean for our winter season. We'll take a look at the European model, and you can see, again, low pressure ejects off the Rockies. Again, notice the low placement, all right? It's pretty far north, which means that warmer air is going to be brought farther to the north. So that range snow line might be all the way up into Canada, right? So the low moves through, right? Moves from west to east. And again, behind that, we will have the cold air in place, maybe some snow coming in on the backside, right? Again, typical fall storm. Now, again, behind it, behind the low pressure, cold air in place, high pressure, clockwise flow, cold air in place. And then there you go. So the models do seem to agree on that setup there. All three seem to agree on that. You get the cold air coming in behind it, you're going to have the setup for your next storm. Although the European is a little bit more tame with it, but still, we do see a good amount of snow here, even as far south as Kansas. And again, maybe some ice even for the Texas Panhandle. So certainly could get very interesting there. So snowfall totals, while they don't have as much, they do have a 12 inches plus there for northern North Dakota. But they do have snow coming a little bit further south, maybe into Iowa and central southern Nebraska, maybe even down the western portions of Kansas, getting in on some action here. Now again, do keep in mind that because this is the European model, this does assume a 10-to-1 snow to liquid ratio. So do keep that in mind. It's not the more accurate ratio that we took a look at before, but it still gives you an idea of how much snow we could see. All right, now what you've been waiting for. What could this mean here going into the winter of 2024? So or 2023 and 24. So let's take a look here. We have the El Nino advisory out from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, right? El Nino is anticipated to participate and continue through the northern hemisphere with an 80% chance even through the spring. All right, and they even state here, of course, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I would bore you guys out in 2 seconds, but they even state that there is a chance, a 30% chance or so, that a historically strong El Nino event, kind of like the one we saw in 2015 to 16, 97 to 98, one of which, I bet you can guess which, I remember pretty well. That would be the one from 2015. That was a very strong El Nino, and as is the one in 97 and 98, where a lot of cities in the eastern seaboard really didn't get any snow, right? But again, as I've talked about, and as you saw earlier, El Nino is not the only thing that influences weather, right? But again, seasonal average of greater than 2 degrees Celsius in that Nino 3-4 region is kind of like what constitutes that strong El Nino. All right, so they do favor at least some sort of strong event. Again, 75 to 85% chance through November and then into through January as well. So a pretty moderate to strong El Nino could be in place here going into the wintertime. Now, interesting enough, you'll start to see some signs of that. Starting with the monthly temperature outlook from NOAA. This is the outlook they issued for November of 2023, so next month. Now, what they usually do is somewhere around the middle of the month, they'll release the outlook for next month. Then around the 30th or the 31st, usually around the end of the month, they'll give an updated outlook for November. But this is their preliminary one out of two here, if you will. You can see equal chances, right? Anywhere we could see, equal chances of above or below normal temperatures. They don't like to put the below normal. I'm not going to say they're warm biased, but they don't really seem to put it on there very much. But in the equal chances, that's where you have your quote unquote, best chance to see cooler air, even though it's technically now forecasted for you to see cooler air during the month of November. But of course, even if you are in the orange, right, in the above, that doesn't mean you will not be cool at all during the month or cold. Just means that overall, when the month is over, you will end up being warmer than you were supposed to be. And the highest chances of that are in the southwest and even parts of the southeast as well. But interestingly, if we look at the precipitation outlook, this right here is the almost picture perfect, nearly a picture perfect example of what the precipitation outlook looks like for an El Nino winter. And I'm going to explain to you why right now. So typically during an El Nino, right, especially particularly a stronger one as well, right, we kind of have the jet stream maybe coming sort of something like this. Again, depends on oscillations and a bunch of other factors. But typically speaking, the Midwestern areas are drier. And that's what it does show here for the month of November. Right? Some drier air leading to drier times across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. What also happens is, right, that polar jet might come through something like this, right, maybe coming a little bit further north, right, leading to some slightly warmer and drier air. But what it also does is that there's this Pacific jet stream, an extended Pacific jet that helps to bring in moisture to parts of the south and southeast. And that is pretty much the picture perfect example here. If you went and looked at, for example, my first winter forecast video, you'll see I show you a map where, what a precipitation and temperature typically look like in an El Nino. And in terms of precipitation, again, this almost looks like the typical map right here. Right? Wetter times for the south and southeast, drier times for the Midwest are two of the things that you typically see in an El Nino. So this definitely solidifies, right, the likelihood of seeing an El Nino, and not just right now, because we know we're in one right now. We don't need to forecast that. But the probability of it continuing through the winter, maybe even the early spring, is certainly increasing, especially when I look at this outlook, because that means we're definitely in the thick of it in terms of El Nino right now. Now, let's take a look at the Geo Potential Heights to kind of show you what could happen, again, shorter term and long term. So here's the European model. You can see, again, as we head through, again, you can really see like these cutoff low pressure systems are right here, right? We got like the dip in the jet stream, but then I got like another dip here, which has a cutoff low pressure system in it that's going to eventually eject out from the Rockies and move across the United States. And then there you go. There's the really big trough dip there right after Halloween, the afternoon of November 1st. And then that moves through, and then there's another low pressure system that comes in from Alaska behind that one. So yeah, it seems like a whole messy, stormy outlook here continuing over the next couple of weeks, maybe even beyond that. But how about a little bit longer in term? All right, here's the CFS model. You can see again through the end of this month, you can kind of see troughing in the west, right, and more so ridging in the east, right? Because again, what goes down has to come back up, and that's what we're definitely seeing there. However, there could be a flip in the pattern again. We're getting a little bit more longer term now. We're going through the first week of November, definitely getting a couple weeks out there. You can see again a lot more troughing in the east now, right, with lower geopotential heights. We kind of see troughing in the Gulf of Alaska here, and then the ridge comes up like this. So this is pretty much your jet stream pattern right there. So really warm air across the west, across Alaska, across the south, and then the Midwest, upper Midwest and Northeast kind of sees that cooler air and those stormier times, right? Lower pressure, typically means cooler air and more moist air, maybe leading to some more convection, thunderstorms, or snowstorms, depending on what season you're talking about. But that's what happens when you get the dip in the jet stream, right? And then even continuing on, right? It gets a little bit more fuzzy in the outlook here, but even by mid-November, we could even see, maybe even the potential still for some slight, troughing in the east, although it's kind of less prevalent maybe even a little bit more western storminess as we head into, say, the end of the month of November. Right, and then you can see again, even into end of November, beginning of December. We are getting long term, but that is what I promised you guys. You can see again, little trough here, a little ridging here, and then troughing here. So definitely the outlook is going to get very interesting as we head into the winter here. Again, that was your CFS outlook for that. How about GEFS, which kind of takes you out kind of a couple weeks or so? You can kind of see again with just what I was showing you earlier. Maybe by early November, we could be back to the pattern we were in just a few days ago, where we had troughing in the east in that positive PNA pattern and more ridging in the west. All right, and CFS temperature outlook, again, this is going by month here, so you can see by February, maybe we see a little bit more cooler air taking hold in the east, and then by March, maybe April, it's still a little bit warm. Again, CFS, I can say for sure, does have a little bit of a warm bias, but let it be known that there could be some cooler air. Maybe you can see that comes in the west in that frame in January, maybe in the east in February. All right, and then we'll certainly have to see from there. However, the precipitation outlook certainly looks interesting, right? Here's December, maybe stormier for the east, maybe even for the west as well, above average precipitation. And you can really see that solidifies in the east now through January, and then February kind of reverses, then March and April, we're right back in it. So definitely typical, again, of that stronger El Nino. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. And if you made it to the end of the video, maybe drop a comment saying hi. I do appreciate watching to the end of the video. And for those of you that did, I do have a special announcement that my second winter forecast for 2023 and 2024 winter, the official outlook, I do a lot of these discussions, but the official forecast probably will be coming out in about a week or so. I am still working on, there's still a lot of things to take in here. A lot of things are coming out, especially with NOAA releasing their winter outlook recently. So a lot of things to take in. Right, but we'll definitely be working on releasing that probably within the next week or so, and I'm definitely excited to keep working on it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm the Weather Dude signing off till next time. I'll catch you guys in the next video.